Check it out, folks. The mosquitoes, man. Check it out, folks. Old Faithful is back on the road. Good day, everyone. Today is a day I've been waiting for a few weeks now. Ever since the accident with the Meteor, I've needed to get some parts for it. And you're probably all wondering, what is this thing on my forehead? Yeah, well, that's the result of crawling under a vehicle and bumping your head. So that's all that is. No, I didn't get in a fight. No, it's nothing like that. Although that would have made a better story. But anyways, back to the Meteor. So I've spent a few weeks searching for parts, and anyone that knows these cars knows that they're very rare. And you know, it's not a Chevelle or a Mustang or anything like that, so they don't even make parts for this car. I have to get used parts. So a friend of mine gave me the web address of an auto wrecker in southern Alberta. It's near a town called Brooks, or actually Tilly, Alberta. So we're putting Tilly on the map. And I phoned the guy down there and I said, do you have a right front corner of a 70 Meteor? And he goes, I think I do. I thought, really? And yeah, it turns out he's got all the parts. So we're taking a road trip down there. My son's going to be here shortly. And it's 5 hours one way from here. So it's a bit of a jaunt. But we're going to drive that today and get those parts and get back home, hopefully in one piece. So really looking forward to this.
We hit the highway. And normally we would take the faster Highway 2 South, which is a divided highway. But this time we thought, no, you know what? We're gonna go take some side highways that are more scenic, and there was way less traffic, and really enjoyed the drive. It was fantastic. This was also a part of Alberta that I'd never seen before, so it was great to explore this new territory. It took a little over 5 hours to get there, which would have taken, as it turns out, the same amount of time taking the faster highway. We had a brief interaction with the auto-wrecker owner, picked up the parts, and we hit the road again heading north. I was amazed at how many windmills there were in southern Alberta. They seem to be everywhere, but they do get a lot of wind in that area, so that just makes sense to have them there. Next, we drove through the picturesque area of Drumheller, home of the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Dinosaurs. Due to COVID, everything was closed, so we could only stop for a coffee and keep driving. Then we drove through the town of Meeting Creek, Alberta. Those of you that watched the Going North series, episode 1, you would know that we've been here before.
Well, we just had something really cool happen. We stopped at Meeting Creek, Alberta, which is where I bought the Meteor from over a year ago, and just wanted to see if the owner was there, the guy we bought it from, Reg. And he wasn't at home, but as we were leaving town, still in town, he drove by, so we stopped him and we chatted for, I don't know, 20 minutes?
Yeah, something like that.
And then we were saying our goodbyes, and he turns around and he goes, look, there's the guy that he bought the car from. His name is Jerry. So I stopped Jerry and chatted with him very briefly. It was pretty cool that we bumped into him, I think.
Perfect timing.
And he agreed. He watched some of the videos of the Alaska trip, and he agreed that I could come and talk to him in the future about the car, because he said there's a lot of history about that car. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it all fell in place. That's something.
Yeah, wow. So we still got a little ways to go home. Camera's falling. So we got a little ways to get home, but well, probably less than 2 hours anyways, according to the GPS. About 2 hours. So that was a cool stop.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
So in true Going North fashion, I know this isn't Going North, but this is Meteor related. Check out this gas gauge. So we have an hour. How far does GPS say? We have an hour and a half to get home, and we're gonna see if we can get back home on the same gas that we filled up with
at home. So let's see what happens. Well, we are stopped, but not because we're out of gas. On empty. And we got 1,000 kilometers, so that was pretty impressive. So pretty happy with the truck, and we got the parts for the car. So maybe we'll show you what we got.
Yeah, but overall it's a pretty good trip.
Yeah, it was. Excellent trip.
Yeah.
Now I could have a better look at these pieces. We were a little hurried when we picked them up. So the headlight assembly, and we had a piece of chrome trim. The header panel was pretty good, small dent. And then the fender. Outside of the fender is in excellent shape. Very good condition. Even the bottom here is, other than this surface rust, it's solid, totally solid. This is a really good fender. So, pretty happy with this. The first step I took in prepping this fender was to remove the loose surface rust that was on the inside of the fender. And the simplest way for me to do that was just with an electric drill and the wire wheel. And it took some time, but it all came off real nice. My plan was to paint the inside of the fender with a rust converter, and I'll show you that in a few moments. The fender was very smooth, just a couple of small hail type of dents. But there was this big hole for the radio antenna. I don't need this because my antenna is mounted at the back of the car. There were also other holes for trim that I didn't have in my car, so I filled them in just by welding them shut. The hole for the antenna was way too big to weld shut, so I went through my drawer full of washers, and I found one that with a little bit of grinding fit just perfect in there. Next I used a welding magnet to hold the washer perfectly in place so that I could tack weld all the way around the washer. I'm just using a MIG welder with flux core wire. I'm not using gas, and for this kind of work it actually does a good job. The metal is thick enough to do this. I'm not the perfect welder, but I can get the job done. Welding, I took it in high school. Best course I took in high school. Then I took the grinder and just worked the welds down somewhat close to the surface of the fender. And then after that, I put the flap disc wheel on the grinder, and then I could make it flush with the fender surface. Eventually, I did weld the hole shut that you see here, and then body filled it after that. The rest of the welding on the fender I treated in the same manner. Then I coated the whole inside of the fender with a rust converter. It's also a primer. And this stuff, it stops the rust chemically, and it turns the rust to a black color once it dries. I've never used it before, but it had great reviews online, and it's pretty simple to apply, so I'm giving it a shot. The replacement header panel I received did have a dent down the center, so I had to pound it out a little bit, and then I filled it, and it took some work, and I'm not a professional at this. I don't do it every day, so it takes me a while to get this stuff done and to get it smooth. I've done it before, but it's been a few years. Had to do a lot of block sanding and refilling, and then used spot putty, that's the darker red color. And then I had to remount the holes for the emblem on the front. It took a couple hours before I could prime. I'm just using spray cans on this job. I've done the paint gun thing before with professional paint, but this time I wasn't going for a professional finish. I sprayed the inside of the fender with a rocker guard. It's kind of almost rubberized, and it's a black color, and it's good for when stones hit it. It's very resistant to chipping. Did a fair bit of block sanding on the front of the fender, especially the areas where I'd welded the holes shut and filled in afterwards. Using a dry cloth, I wiped down the whole outside of the fender to remove any dust or particles in order to prepare the fender for priming. Using primer is very important. If you were to just use paint directly over top of bare metal and bodywork, it may not stick. The primer tends to stick better to the metal and the bodywork, and the paint sticks better to the primer. Once the primer was dry, I block sanded it again in order to paint, and I wiped it down with a cloth as well. There is a bit of a trick to using these spray cans. I tend to use very thin coats. If you put on too heavy, it will totally run and cause drips, and that's very frustrating. So you're better off just taking your time and doing light coats. This paint dries quick. I think it was about 10 minutes between coats. So I don't remember how many coats I put on, probably at least 4, but while you're painting, as you're putting the coats on, you'll know if you need more paint. I was finally at the point where I could take off the broken pieces of the car and start reassembly. Because a lot of these pieces were bent, it took quite a while to take this apart. I also wanted to save the headlight that wasn't broken, so it was a bit of extra work being careful with all this. What a difference between the old and the new. The new piece, I was really happy with the lettering because they were on in the right spots. The original header panel, they were in the wrong place. There's no way I could have straightened out the old piece as nice as this one. And I gave this new piece a fresh coat of paint just to give it a little more rust protection. Finally, I could begin reassembly. I'd been waiting for this for a long time. I will admit it was a bit frustrating trying to put that fender on. It seems like more of a two-man job. I don't know how they did it in the factory. I probably should have got someone to help me with it, but I did get it on. I couldn't have been happier with how this turned out. The paint isn't perfect, but I don't care. I can drive the car again, no problem.
This feels really good to be driving again.